Thank you for joining us for How Your Media Business Can Thrive During a Global Pandemic, presented by the Heartland chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, the regional Emmy Awards organization. We're delighted to present an incredible panel of media professionals who will give us the benefit of their experience and answer our questions. With us today is Tim Wieland, News Director at KCNC CBS 4 here in Denver, with over 20 years in news broadcasting and reporting. Also with us is Dana Kopper, General Manager of High Noon Entertainment, with 20 years and over 4,000 hours of film and production experience. Also on our panel is Jasper Gray, founder of Futuristic Films and a globetrotting cinematographer and director by trade. Thank you, Tim, Dana, and Jasper, for your time and energy today. Now, the driving force behind today's production is our own Juliana Brosti of Traveling Jules Productions and the Heartland Chapter's Program Chair. Jules will begin with general questions for Dana, Jasper, and Tim to get our discussion going. The second part of our show will be taking questions from you via Facebook Live chat and YouTube video chat, which we'll relay to our guests. All in all, we'll be here about an hour, and the entire program will be available afterward on YouTube. Over to you, Jules.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Audrey. It is so wonderful to see everybody here. We are here. It is 2020, right? This year just wasn't exactly what any of us planned, to say the least. And we are so thrilled to have so much experience here on the stage at one table. We just want to hop right in and ask some questions because we know we have so much to cover today. Just to start, I want to ask a question to everybody. You know, as 2020 is what it is, what would you say is the most memorable challenge that you have experienced so far? And also, maybe on the upside, what's an opportunity maybe that came about, maybe you didn't plan on?
Who do you want to start, Jules?
Jasper, that will be you.
I would say the most memorable challenge, I think, is probably something we can all relate to, is right when the shutdown happened and how quickly it did, and just having to cancel all of our shoots and just kind of like really just, you know, not knowing what was going to happen over the next few weeks and the next, you know, what was coming. But just like that emotional kind of punch of just, we were heading out, we were like prepping gear, about to go shoot a commercial in the mountains, and we just had to just like instantly kind of stop. I think the speed of which that kind of happened was just really shocking, I think. But you know, kind of like moving through that, I think some of the kind of like, well, you guys want to talk about the challenges you had before we kind of talk about what we learned?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Because what I love about each of you is we all have sort of we're all on different sides of the video production business, and it is vastly different. Dana, do you want to talk a little bit about the programming side?
Sure. When the pandemic hit, I mean, we had shows that were actually filming all across the country, probably 8 series at the time, and they all had to be shut down, which put people out of work, freelancers that you know, had expected months and months of work with the type of shows that we were shooting. And it caused us to have to just really think about how do we keep people, you know, on the hook, and make sure they have some of their livelihood, but also understand that we are stopping down. So fortunately, we had quite a bit in the can. So we were able to keep our posts up and running, but the challenge with that was actually figuring out how everybody could do it remotely. And then once we got through that, we had a little bit of stabilization until we could be back in the field, which we are now.
Yeah, I would echo that experience. I mean, you know, if you had told me in February that I needed to go 80% plus remote in our news operation, I would have asked for 9 to 12 months to accomplish that. Instead, we had really about 2 weeks to truly get it done. And then, of course, we can't stop down. We have to continue to produce newscasts and meet deadlines. And so there wasn't that opportunity to sort of stop what we were doing, build a plan to work remotely, and then resume our operation. It all had to happen while we were obviously still covering this major story.
Yeah, I think for me too, like one of the opportunities that we found, and both the other panelists, I think, are on much bigger teams and much bigger kind of production entities. We have about 12 people full time here at Futuristic, and including there's a lot of freelancers as well that we work with that we consider part of our family. But it was really just sort of like being able to really kind of connect with those people, not just on the professional level, but just kind of like dealing with the emotions of kind of going through like the first month or so of the lockdown in particular, and just kind of having like a bigger work family. It definitely kind of brought us closer together, and I think really kind of consolidated our team. But it was nice not just to not just like figuring out ways to like workflow, but also kind of figure out ways to kind of like just be in touch and just kind of take care of each other. And I'm sure that you guys can speak more to that because I know your teams are much bigger. But that was really kind of an important part, an unexpected part of kind of working remotely. But it was just the trivia, the little happy hours, just the check-ins, and making sure everyone was doing well emotionally as well as work-wise.
Yeah, I would say from my point of view, we definitely are a family as well, and it was learning how to connect when everybody's in a different place. And I think we were able to do that fairly well. I mean, I miss everybody, but Zoom helps. It was weird getting, on those calls at first, but now I think everybody's pretty schooled in it. And the other thing that I saw as an opportunity for us as a company is with all of our post work to continue to get shows on the air. I mean, we didn't miss a beat. We had things in place where we could start remote editing immediately so that we could still deliver our programs as planned that were in the can. And I think it just helped us realize that we can do what we do from wherever we are. I mean, we like to do it more as a team, but we have the capacity to be able to do it from wherever the person needs to be.
I guess the silver lining, additional silver lining I'd share is just that we all learned a lot about our own adaptability. That an example is that we have an election coming up in a couple of weeks here. And I will tell you that from a planning standpoint, there are a lot of things we still don't know about how we're going to cover election night, how the political parties are going to communicate, the campaigns themselves. Any other year, these are the types of details that are nailed down in August. And we're a couple of weeks out from an election night, and we still don't have a lot of those details. And honestly, we're not really even breaking a sweat about it. That'd be the sort of thing that would given me a panic attack in any other year. And now we just know that we're going to be able to roll with it.
Yeah, very true. So, Tim, I mean, being in the newsroom, what's really crazy is that when March rolled around and suddenly everybody had to stop what they were doing and go home and be safe, you did not have that luxury. Especially, there were many different areas of the world that had to still move forward. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge there was just obviously learning while we were doing, I'm very grateful to have such an amazing staff in this newsroom, and their understanding, their desire to learn too, knowing that we were all learning as we were going, and that was obviously the great challenge. We were learning about how to protect ourselves in the field. I mean, as the country was hearing different guidance from our leadership about how to stay safe and healthy, we were changing almost on a daily basis the guidance to crews in the field about what they should and shouldn't be doing, how many feet we're supposed to be standing away, and masking, and all of that. So it was just a lot of communication, like we've all been saying, and an understanding that, guidance was going to change day to day, if not hour to hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the fact that you had to do, like, your anchors were recording from home, right? Tell me a little bit more about what in the production world, how did people's jobs shift really? I saw people on the phone doing interviews, right? Were there tactics and things that you had to do to just get your job done?
Yeah, I mean, obviously all that changed dramatically. For our crews that work on reporter and photojournalist teams, everybody started working from home, of course, so that all of our editorial meetings went to Zoom, just like everyone. And then, for them, they would meet in the field if they were doing a story in the field, do an interview, shoot a story, go back to their homes. The reporter would begin logging. Well, the photographer would ingest the video, reporter logs it, writes it, goes into his or her closet, and all of our reporters will tell you they learned the best closet in their house with the best acoustics for tracking a story. Track the story usually into their phone in the best closet in the house, and then send that to the photographer who would edit it and send that back to the station to roll in the newscast. And then the reporter and photographer would potentially meet back out at a live location for the newscast. So, obviously just dramatically different type of workflows. And every one of our work groups had a similar type of situation like that.
Yeah, that sounds really cumbersome. When you're used to working with people every day, you must have relied on the internet a lot, huh? And phones. Yeah,
and every communication platform known and unknown to us. I've learned a lot about all sorts of communication platforms and streaming services in the last 7 or 8 months.
Yeah, crazy. And Tim, you actually kind of became a behind-the-scenes reporter. You were documenting kind of not just the shift outside in the world where we saw the reporters in the field, but what was happening in the newsroom. What was it like being back on the streets as a reporter?
Yeah, I wrote an article early on about, just because I was so impressed by, like I said, the work our team was doing. And it was really fulfilling to kind of write about what was happening behind the scenes. And we got great feedback on it because I think, like you said, there's a curiosity about how we're doing our jobs right now in the midst of all this. And so I just began writing a series of articles for our website about what we were doing behind the scenes, how we were accomplishing our goals and among different work groups each day. And I'll admit, amidst all the craziness, it was sort of a nice creative outlet for me too, to be able to, write about something and have a little creative outlet for myself too, amidst all this.
True. I mean, when news happens, that's your instinct. You're just there ready to go. But anyway, we're really grateful that you were able to get the news on. We really have relied on it so heavily. Dana, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about what you experienced as well during that whole shutdown time. You said you had a lot of productions going on. What was it like for you during that crazy time?
Sure. We had 8 productions up in the field. We had everything had to shut down, and then we are a bigger part of a larger corporation that's worldwide. So our team put together what we call a COVID committee, and we started working through project by project and assessing state and county restrictions to see if and when we could get back up, and if we did, how. A lot of it meant reducing our crew size, hiring more locals within a specific state, doing weekly testing, and just, everything from how you walk into a house for a renovation show and how you shoot it, to having people outside, to where people are placed, to how you eat lunch, to where you wash your hands. I mean, everything changed. And we took it very seriously with putting these crews back out in the field once we were able to do it. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all, and it is specific to each project where the concerns are. And when you're dealing with multiple entities, like on a renovation show where you have your film crew, but then you also have your talent and the renovation crew, and the homeowner, there's 4 or 5 different parties that may or have different viewpoints on mask wearing and what's safe and what isn't, and the 6-foot social distancing. So we have a COVID supervisor on our shows now that their job is to make sure that people are practicing social distancing, wearing their masks, and surveying the scene at all times, so that if a case does come up and someone tests positive, we have the ability now to do contract tracing with the idea that we can hopefully isolate the individual versus having to shut down the entire show and losing, having a financial impact, losing the momentum to get a show shot. So we've really worked hard to put together a comfort area that people are working in, but it's very different. And I think it's a lot harder. I think it takes more time even to set up a scene. You have to creatively think about what you're shooting and why. Not everybody can be hugging and standing next to each other anymore. They have to be, in a room, and it might cause you to frame a shot differently. So it impacted every aspect of the production.
Yeah, and you have so many, in all those productions, there's so many types of productions, right? From Love Island to renovation shows, very different size crews. How do you adjust the formula for each one? Or are they all the same?
Yes, so for a simple show, a renovation type show, there's usually 10 to 12 crew members, and we're typically testing once a week. For one of our other labels within our company, for a Love Island, they basically took over the hotel in Las Vegas, isolated their entire cast and crew for the time that it took to shoot the show, and did weekly, if not daily testing, depending on what they needed to do. Wow. So it's something that you need to work with the networks on, get the network sign off on. There's a substantial cost associated with that, and which most networks, I think, now understand that this is life as it is right now, and if they want the project, they're going to have to pay for some of the safety, which is substantial. So I think it was a learning curve all the way around.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to hear, though, that things are you are shooting now, right? Any thoughts about kind of what goes through your mind every day with the constant changes and surprises?
I get certain phone numbers on my phone, and I know that when that number calls, someone's tested positive, and that we're going to have to stop down and take action immediately and isolate an individual. We're constantly checking state and county restrictions. And then, people do have time off. And when they're not working for us, we aren't in a constant bubble. So we hope that, everyone works together and works as a family and respects the protocols and the safety measures that we have in place when they're in their time off. But sometimes it can't be helped. And people test positive and they have no idea how or why. And it's, understanding what to do for the next step so that people aren't panicked, so that we can take care of our crews in a health and safety fashion.
Yeah, wow. There's a lot of extra labor there to just make sure everyone's safe. I want to talk to you more about that, but I want to make sure we talk with Jasper too before we take questions from the audience. Jasper, I'm so curious how it's like as an independent, as you own your own studio, which is so well known in town. When you think about COVID and the surprises that have happened, how did you approach filming? Have you been on pause for 6 months? Have you been able to do any productions? Kind of walk me through your progression there.
Well, I think, what I've just heard from the other guys on the panel, it's just, production is like a problem solving business, right? Like we're all about, we solve problems every day. Usually they're creative or like workflow, but I think we're also perfectly suited to handle like a kind of curveball. And this is a huge curveball, but I would just kind of echo what those guys have been saying. We were able to shoot in different ways at different times, over the course of the pandemic. We started out that first week, we just sort of, stopped. Then we would kind of work as a really small crew, really before kind of like the masks, where we just like stayed away from each other, and we were filming, the kind of the classic like empty streets. Like there was like we made, I think, a very good one, but definitely our own version of that. Just kind of like, we were all kind of like creatively, I think, responding to the shock of seeing how empty the streets were. And we wanted to kind of get the message out. We worked with the Downtown Denver Partnership on a video during that time. And then literally like at every sort of stage, we have done different things. Like we were doing a lot of contract work for probably companies like High Noon that couldn't send a crew in, when we would, set up a Zoom call and a full camera team, but the producer would call in on a Zoom monitor and do the interview. And then we actually had people that were doing that for us when we were able to do, weren't able to travel or wasn't as responsible to travel. And so like, I felt like every week we were kind of like learning something a little bit more. I had one project that we actually sent out like 7 or 8 laptops that were like sort of set up as their own mini studio. An AC would get it in a different city and sort of be able to set up a kit. And we were able to, record like a professional quality audio and video. That was for like a corporation that needed, like a kind of a typical corporate video that we would normally be traveling, to all the different cities. But yeah, so it was, it was interesting. Like every week we did something like that. I'd say now we're sort of back in the more typical, like, production side of things, but just sort of like the way that we handle safety is just, like a, much different. We'll have the props crew come in and do the house, like even the day before. And then the lighting crew will kind of come in with a camera and the way that we handle kind of all of that stuff. I would say that we just completed our largest production since the lockdown, and it was definitely like a pretty big production even in a normal time for us with like relatively big crew, like lots of days, lots of moving parts, cranes and dollies and all that stuff. And we had safety officers on that and really strict protocol, and then on just recently, actually just on Sunday night, like I got a call and someone had tested positive on that set, which was the first time that had happened to us. And I was, just like devastated at that time. But then, just even then I just looked back and felt it wasn't my responsibility, but just being there, I felt really good about our, the protocols that we had. And the fact that, we like, you treat every day as if someone is walking around asymptomatic. And so if those protocols like hold, then we should be fine, right? That's the true test, right? Everything else is just getting lucky. And sure enough, like we've sent the entire crew for testing and there hasn't been a single additional positive. So I think for me, and I know that Dana's been dealing with this in a much bigger realm. But for me, that was even more reassuring than maybe having like, no positive test at all. The fact that our protocols worked. And I believe that we as a production community have, every tool we need to keep our sets safe. And if that's a priority, then there's no reason why we can't keep working with a few, kind of like, necessary tweaks to our system. So that's really important. I think, I want to thank the freelance community in Denver and Colorado for the most part taking it super, super seriously. I think, everyone's got a little bit of a different political view or personal viewpoint, but when they see that the system can work and we can all get back to work, I think that's most important. And so we've had nothing but support, and it's been great.
You're right. Yeah, it's like to think of not working during all this time is devastating in one way, right? But then, okay, if we can work, how are we doing it? And just the amount of decision making and thoughts and planning that goes through that. You guys have all been there. It's exhausting. I've heard everyone talk a little bit about. Jasper, your shoots, you have a lot of control over when they happen or how they happen. You have control to say, okay, lighting, you're going in on Monday, camera, we're doing Tuesday, and that's it. But Tim, you have no control. You're going to the protest, you're going to the fire. Can you guys talk a little bit about what that situation, brings up for you?
Well, yeah, you're right. We have no control. It really, we react to whatever the day throws at us. And like you said, Jules, it's every day is a different environment, a different type of story, a different situation. There are some common threads and things that we learn. but it really isn't an overstatement to say that each day there's at least one scenario, for one of the stories that we're shooting that we haven't encountered before. And, not only have we obviously been covering the pandemic, but we have had, obviously a major civil rights and social justice movement in this country and here in Colorado, and a lot to cover regarding that, the most contentious election any of us can remember. And then on top of it, here in Colorado, we've had probably our worst wildfire season in history. And so we're covering all of this, in the midst of the pandemic, which sort of overshadows everything that we do. But we can't stop covering all of those things. We can't stop covering politics. We can't stop covering the fires and evacuations. And when we're up there today, trying to figure out how we cover people who are in shelters, who have evacuated their homes, and do that safely. So each day brings a new challenge, and it comes back to everything you've heard us all say. It's just communication, conversation, recognizing that it's going to be a challenge as we head out the door, and talking about how we're going to try to meet that challenge today, and then adapting as we go.
But hey, that's production, right?
That is production. That's production.
I think, okay, well, this is why I started 25 years ago, because I liked that challenge, and I liked the unknown and the unpredictability and having to work through each situation and figure out the puzzles along the way. I mean, that's what we're doing now.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd take a hair more predictability than we have right now. But you're right. This is why we got into this, right? Yeah, absolutely.
I think, one thing just to add to that is just like how, this particular time has shined a light on how important media is. I don't know the numbers, but I feel like I've watched more news in the past, 3 or 4 months than ever before. And in entertainment and even like in my position to kind of help, like businesses and other businesses, like tell their message, get their message out, how they're adapting it's all just like so important. And I think that's one thing that, I think makes it more satisfying. The fact that we've been able to do our jobs and continue to shoot and tell stories is just the fact that it is necessary, particularly the news.
That's a really good point. But I mean, everyone who's at home is consuming. They're on social media, they're on TikTok, they're waiting for their next season of their favorite show to come out, and it's not happening, right? Dana, don't you feel that like pressure to just keep going? You can't just pause either.
Yeah, no, we keep going. I mean, we even sold new series as early as this week. And it's all been virtual just to get ready for the next thing. I mean, people want to be entertained, and there is a need for it, and we're just figuring out different ways to be able to sell it and provide it to the viewers. It's exciting.
Mm-hmm. Have you had to reuse a lot of old stuff too, like stuff that was sitting on the shelf that was never going to be used, and now you're like, okay, we could use that?
At the very beginning, there was talk about what they called like repacks of shows. Mm-hmm. So like if it was a cooking show, or if it was like some sort of show, they would say, well, how can we get these people to talk about what's already aired and how they were feeling or what they thought when they were doing this? So there were some shows like that in the beginning stages before we could actually be out in the field, where we would send a kit to the talent and they would talk about their past experiences while we undercut footage of what they were talking about before. But I think that need went away fairly quickly because we were able to adapt and pivot and learn how to get back out in the field and keep our teams safe. So it didn't last as long as I thought it would have. I think the first 3 months there was some demand like that, and then it went back to the normal requests.
That's interesting. And Jasper, did you feel in the commercial world, because I know you do a lot of commercials for very big brands, did you feel that they were like, oh, I don't want to spend money, no more productions? Or were they like, okay, we really need to change our message and we actually need your help right now?
I think that, things were changing so quickly, like on a weekly basis, in terms of like, it was really hard for brands to understand like how to communicate what they wanted to communicate. I just felt like that was one of the biggest things that I think even harder than a production decision, like how to shoot it, I think was maybe what to say and how to say that. So we love it when we can, talk to our clients early on and kind of like help like find that messaging together. But I would say that was maybe even a bigger problem than maybe tighter budgets or kind of how to shoot it. I do think that that's one of the things that we love to do is as Futuristic is kind of work with brands like from the beginning and kind of help them through that process. And I think one of the scariest things that happened was when that communication like just stopped. Everyone kind of like hunkered down and just assumed that they couldn't do something or assumed that they weren't able to get like their message out that like they wanted. So that was a really difficult. I think that was the initial kind of like default. But then as those communications, kind of like started to happen or kind of regain, like lots of Zoom calls, even just checking in with with our clients and the different ad agencies in Denver, I think most problems we were able to solve and solve well. So I think that was the biggest thing. I would say that like we have a great production community here in Denver, particularly commercial production, and there's a bunch of small businesses just like myself. And one of the kind of cooler things that we did was I really felt, and this was a shared sentiment, that we needed to look out for each other. And so we produced a small video together, just encouraging like local businesses, even like, ones that you wouldn't necessarily think about our local businesses, but like our local client pool, all kind of like trying to reinvest in Colorado production. And one of the funnest parts about it was, I think, one, it was a great message, and it really needed to be said. That you want that same pride of when you buy a Colorado beer or you buy a like a Colorado like article of clothing, that you get, people should feel that when they have a Colorado production team working for them. But it was super fun because it was a creative project, and we literally had this Zoom call. It was like all the people I would normally compete against, or but really kind of looking to work together, and kind of like it kind of gave us a great sense of community. And I think it was just a fun video, and I think it did help us all kind of get the word out to our clients that we were able to shoot, and that they should really, particularly in times like these, think locally first.
Jasper, I love that the Colorado Creators Alliance, right?
Yes.
I love that video, and I actually have it here. Is it okay to play it?
Yeah, I think it'll be fine. Yeah.
I think it's a great example of the teamwork in the community, how everybody came together, and it also shows off some pretty cool stuff. So let's take a quick minute. I think it's 2 minutes long. We'll just play this real quick.
Hello.
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 Hello. Hello.
We're Colorado's media professionals.
We pen scripts, build sets, roll cameras, edit stories, and create worlds for screens of all sizes.
The reality of COVID-19 and the need to flatten the curve has leveled video projects in our state and across the country.
We learned from an industry survey that in March alone, the majority of us lost over 90% of our work.
It's been quite a blow.
Got it.
But we're reminded how vital our skills are in challenging times like these.
Video has become even more relevant and necessary.
As businesses adapt to these new circumstances, we can help clearly communicate the new plans ahead.
As Colorado creatives, we're rallying together to collaborate and support one another. And we invite you to join us.
We're encouraging local brands, agencies, and production companies to hire local as new projects take shape.
We'll get through this, come out stronger, and be ready to create the next chapter of our story together.
Bravo. That was so
Great.
cool. So cool. So cool. And I don't know if anyone recognized somebody in the punching scene. Did anybody here take a punch?
Casting was limited in the first part of the pandemic, so you had to step up and do my part. I'm usually this is like a bit too much in front of the camera for me, but it was method acting. But no, it was
How
just
many blows did you have to take to get the right shot?
too many. I kept thinking, but it was like really important for the other companies and Futuristic to do that. I think we needed to be able to kind of show that we could create. This was like, kind of like it was concepted in the first couple of weeks of lockdown. And then also just for us to kind of get that message out that, that we have a great creative community here and we should always look to kind of hire local first, particularly now.
Yeah, no, I love the message. Just the idea that even when we're supposed to stop, we should keep creating, and you guys did that. And I was just reading the chat during the quick break, and I saw even Eden Lane left a little message about how comforting Tim, your blogs were during that time where you would do that behind the scenes reporting. It was just nice for everybody outside of the organization just to see what you were going through.
Yeah, I think that was the goal for that series anyway. It was just to let everybody know that, we are going through what they're going through. And I think in some ways that made the reporting from us and other outlets so meaningful, and continues to make it so meaningful, is that it's a story that affects everybody. There's so few of those types of things, frankly, that we cover in the news that affects every single person. And, it's really important to me in that series to just really articulate that as journalists, we were going through and facing the same challenges in our workplace as everybody else is facing.
Yeah, you're not afraid. I like how you weren't afraid to turn the camera on yourself in both cases, right? Where you have to let a little bit out, but you get such a big payoff that other people get a piece of what you're experiencing. I think that's a good topic in general. As creators, we all are. Have you felt any sense of inspiration during this time? Did sort of, wiping the table clean create any empty space for you to fill?
I guess one thing I'll start is just to say that, and so as far as inspiration, I would say that in the last 7 or 8 months, we've probably felt the work we're doing right now is the most meaningful work we've done in our career. I've been doing this now almost 30 years, and I can say that while this has been the hardest year of my career, the work we've been doing is the most meaningful of my career. And that is inspiring. I mean, as challenging as it has been, the work that we're doing and the work that our journalists are doing in the field every day has never been more vital. It's a worldwide pandemic, but it's the ultimate local story. And, because as I said, it affects all of us. And so, so I would say that's certainly been very inspiring.
Mm. How about for you, Dana?
Yeah, I'm not really on the creative side of things, but for me, it's really about how can I keep my teams working and keep the business alive and make sure that we're doing our part so that we can sell shows and that we can keep people who rely on their paycheck the ability to work. And I still think we're putting out great projects. I'm really proud of the shows that we're producing, and just the ability that we've been able to do that during this crazy time has been great. And on my weekly calls that I have with my teams, I really try and motivate everybody, but also talk about how we're making lemonade out of lemons and checking in with people and being real. Like, it's not just about doing the work, it's about supporting each other. And I try and do that and inspire others, because it is hard when you're home every day and dealing with COVID. Like, it's not fun. So how I've really come to appreciate and felt the willingness to be more vulnerable about how I'm feeling as a person and as a leader, and making sure that people know, like, it's okay if you're having a bad day. It's okay that this thing went wrong. We're doing our best, and our best is enough right now.
So true, so true. Thank you for bringing that up, because we forget, we get so focused on output. And I think too, Tim, you proved like you have to keep going. You can't just take a break from the news. So yeah, just realizing like if you can take a break, it's okay. You don't have to always be on, right? We have some really great questions from the audience that I'd like to bring up right now. Bill from Oklahoma, he asks, and he says thank you as well for all the wonderful tips and discussion. He says management can be concerned about this when many people are working remotely. What efforts have been made to keep staff members honest that they're really working the necessary hours for a legitimate shift? It's true when you're working on your own. How do you know they're really doing it? I think that's the question.
I think I can start. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Jasper.
The smallest guy, smallest company can start. But I think for me, like particularly in the beginning, everyone wanted so hard to just contribute. I think it was more like on my side, trying to make sure that we could, for management, explain what we needed and give those guys the tools to get their job done, across the board. I've never seen, people so motivated, and then later, there's always times people have bad days and you can kind of like, you're peeking into different people's lives more intimately when you're seeing them at home. And so you can kind of tell that, but I felt like it was more about like me finding a way, our management team, just to be able to kind of like, give them the instructions they needed. When we're looking at edits and shoots and stuff, I think it's pretty easy to see if it's honest. We know when an edit's done, that when it's done, the quality is there. So I wasn't as worried about that, but it was really just kind of like, we were in a small like building. Typically, everyone keeps track of each other personally in the projects just by, like overhearing it, and so that would happen like through osmosis almost, through this building. And so I felt like we just needed to make sure that we had a ways to kind of like check in on those things. And really, I think the biggest challenge was for me to be able to kind of get the information that I needed for people to kind of like, to do their jobs, but not really motivating at all. Mm-hmm. That was a pleasant surprise.
How about you, Dana? I know you deal with a lot of, management styles over so many shows.
Yeah, I mean, I think during this time, people were very humbled and happy to have the work and wanted to do the work and do it well. I know even for me, when I started working from home, it was really awkward. I was uncomfortable. And just a few weeks ago, I went back into the office to do a couple things, and I was like, this feels weird too. But there's a trust piece, and people, we trust who we're working with, and the work needs to get done, and people know their deadlines and their timelines. And, I mean, I'm checking in and making sure that things are moving the way that they need to. But I also think that the flexibility that people have been given, that where they may not just be doing it 9 to 5, but like they can have that time to get their kids to school and then hunker down and do their work and then eat dinner with their family and then work till 10 o'clock. Sometimes is a better situation than we've been able to have in the past. So I think we're seeing the productivity improve almost because people are grateful that they have the work. People are grateful that they can do the work in the hours that they need to. And we don't really care how it's done as long as it hits the deadline.
True. Yeah, that's a great point.
I would say the same thing is happening in news, that our traditional shifts have blurred for sure. And obviously in news, just like in any production, there's a job that has to get done, and it either gets done or it doesn't. And obviously whenever I have felt like there's an area where we could have done better work or where we need to improve, we talk about that as a team. But at the same time, we've really recognized that people's hours sometimes are a little different because now they're dealing with new challenges at home. Like you're saying that there may be children learning at home, and you're having to help them with that or get them to and from something. And so, like our traditional reporter for our 10 o'clock news, she might start working on her story now at 10 in the morning and get some things set up, and then be on the 1:30 editorial meeting, but then may need to go help with remote learning for a couple hours, and then go do her interview at 5 o'clock. You know what I mean? So I think that is the exact same thing is happening in news, where the hours have changed, and what we have defined as a traditional shift isn't what it used to be. But at the end of the day, did the job get done or did it not? And was it as good as we wanted it to be, or was it not? Those are the conversations we have, and not so much, did you put in your 8 hours today?
Mm-hmm. Very good point. And I think that's interesting that COVID has forced us to try new workflows and redefine not just how we feel about it, but like what is a shift? Why do we need a shift? All of that stuff. And when you think about those parameters, let's say next year, let's be optimistic that in 2021 everything's fine and we can be normal again. Do you think that will shifts go back to shifts? Do you think we'll go back to where we came from, or do you think we'll be able to incorporate some of these new learnings and workflows? How do you see that kind of adjustment and change over time?
I guess from the news side, I would say that we will. I don't see it necessarily ever going back in terms of that more regimented shift. I think that we have learned that giving this flexibility is good for the product and good for people. And so being able to join the editorial meetings, for example, by Zoom, if you can't be there in person, will be a thing. And people may find that to be the best workflow for them that day. So I think things like that, that flexibility will stay. A lot of things will go back, I want everybody back in the newsroom as soon as possible. And I'm not one of those people who believes that in the future news is going to be done with all remote crews. I don't subscribe to that theory at all. I think we need to be back. I want our people back. News is best when we're collaborating, arguing, brainstorming as a group, and I want us all back together again when we can do it safely. But I do think that those workflows, those more relaxed, if you will, in some ways, workflows, allowing us to connect remotely, are going to be helpful to people and helpful to the product.
I love that. Very cool. Does anyone else want to say anything on that?
I mean, I would just second all of that, I just think that I love the passion too. Like I'm a people person, so I want to be around, hashing things out, collaborating, in person. But I will say that the added flexibility of Zoom and remote edits and those tools, I don't think that they're going to go anywhere, and nor should they. They all have their place, and I think it's maybe some of us. I hated video calls. We probably all did, and now they're just it feels weird just getting on the regular phone. But I think that they have kept things productive. So yeah, I'm hopeful that we can get back and kind of collaborate in person, but I don't think that these lessons in technology that we've been forced to learn should go anywhere.
Cool. And that's a great segue to my next question from Eden Lane. She asks, are there any new workflows or tools that you've developed during this situation that you think you're going to keep? So for example, Jasper, did you like that remote, you sent a ring light kit or something out to a field of crew? Did you like that? Will you do that again? Are there other tools that you've discovered?
I think we definitely worked for what it needed to, and part of the reason that we chose that system was because we wanted it to appear that like a work from home situation or a company that had transitioned seamlessly. So that was part of the aesthetic as well. I do think that working remotely, particularly for clients, when we can sort of get on a Zoom call and they can see the camera feed and the set, there's always someone that can't make it or to set, and this will allow them to be there and kind of they can really feel part of it, and just little we use Google Hangouts, but the way that they can comment, people can kind of comment on that stuff. I'm sure Dana can talk about this even more than me, but our remote edit systems have went from from 10 miles an hour to like 100 miles an hour pretty quickly. I would also just, like Tim had mentioned that, how quickly, like if you were, how did you put it? If you were to build out like a plan to go remote, you would need like a year, but it was like instantaneous. And we kind of like, stumbled through, but we're never not productive in our post departments. We just kept getting better and better. And honestly, it's working great right now. I don't see any of those things really changing. Remote feeds and edit, collaborative, like watching of cuts, all of those things, and having like remote clients on set. I don't think those should or would go anywhere.
How about you, Dana? Did you guys learn any tips or tools? Are you using any favorite software or ways to connect? WhatsApp? I don't know.
We're doing a ton of remote edit, and just the ability to share media is hugely important from the field back to our offices and how we ingest it. I mean, once the card's in our shop now, we can even process the media. Someone could do it from their home by just remoting into the system. So there's a lot more flexibility and timing of it all. I mean, to remote into a system, you have to have a system physically at our offices to remote into the system. We aren't doing a ton of cloud-based stuff right now, but I think we will be in the future. I think it just needs to advance a little bit more based on what our requirements are, but it's something that really has given our producers, writers, editors, networks, everybody the ability to see footage real time, which has been helpful along the way.
Wow. So you don't have to send hard drives anymore. You're just like dial in and you can check out what we're doing.
It depends. If it's a show that's shooting, 5 days a week or something, we'll actually dump the media to a drive and ship the drive back to our offices here. But if it's smaller stuff, we will send it over through state.
So combo. Yeah.
It depends on the size, the file size, what it is. But it's a lot easier to do than it was before.
Sure. Wonderful, wonderful. We have one more question here from Dawn. From Dawn. Jasper, this is for you. Have you noticed more or less interest from clients to create video assets because of the pandemic? Like more demand?
I think that the demand is it's kind of pretty constant. I would say that like as we were kind of talking about before, like media has become more necessary than ever, and I think that we've all kind of felt that as much as just I personally have consumed ever. And I think that clients want to be able to get like freshen up their message and stuff. So I think that it's probably a little bit more than previously, just because there's an urgency. But yeah, it's one of the things that I feel very confident about the future is that people are going to need video to get their message out, and it's still the best way of connecting with an audience, almost universally. I feel like it's been great, and that hasn't been an issue for us.
Good. That's good. That's optimistic and good to hear. Because, Tim, we know we need you essential workers. We need the news every day. And we need our programming when we're home. We need to be able to watch our favorite shows. And it's good to know that on the commercial side that people aren't pulling in 100% and just hiding. They're still open to having conversations about that for work.
Absolutely.
We have one more question from Carolyn in Denver. When this pandemic passes, hopefully it's the pandemic, the only one, right? When the pandemic passes, what aspects of business will you want to bring back? What are you most excited to bring back right now?
The people. I want to be with my people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not even, there are facets of the business that'll be nice to, that'll improve as far as workflow and that sort of thing. But, hands down, just to be able to all be together again is, I think, what we all look forward to.
Absolutely.
I totally agree. And the thing that's funny is, okay, so we can't have people. That's the weirdest thing about this pandemic is that we just can't see other people. But what's the one replacement to that is the media, right? It's video, and that's what we all do, which is really exciting. I think by being here, we are all part of the solution to giving us that sense of connection, even though we are so far from our friends and loved ones and colleagues and stuff. It is kind of cool that we are the gateway to the next best thing until they develop teleportation or something, like 3D images of people that we love right there. As we wrap up the conversation, and it's been wonderful to chat with all of you about the different areas of your business, I'm glad to hear that after such a rough, tough blow, literally, we're all making some progress and things are looking up in the world. Would maybe everybody want to share a last sentiment, feelings of advice for everybody in the audience about what they can, what you'd love for them to take away from our conversation today? We'll start with Tim.
I guess the biggest thing I would say that I've learned is just the critical value of communication. Now, obviously, in this difficult environment, but even in the future, is one of the things we did to, keep morale high and also make sure we knew what was happening among our large staff is we now hold regular work group meetings. I hold them with the different work groups. So the field crews, the producers, the digital team, the assignment desk, the editors. And they're just check-in Zoom. I don't always have an agenda. Sometimes it's just how you doing? And those are now a regular thing on my calendar. There's a regular news managers meeting that I have. And then the second thing is I do a lot of, when I block out time on my calendar now to do just one-on-one calls. I'll just go through the group and just call people up and how you doing? What's going on? What are your challenges? How's the family? I mean, just to be able to check in on individual people. And I would just say that if you don't have a system like that already in place, it's not too late to develop one because we're probably going to be doing this for a while. Just make sure you're really checking in with your team because we don't get to see each other in the newsroom every day. So it's, where those little exchanges over at the coffee, where you get to check in on something or you hear about a problem, we don't get to do that now, right? So you have to develop systems. It won't happen organically like it used to unless you put a system in place to talk to your teams. So make sure you have those systems in place to communicate, as groups and then also as individuals. And then the second thing I'll just say briefly is just making sure you're taking care of yourself, and your people are taking care of themselves and, finding that time and not feeling guilty about it. And, that if they need to take care of a family member who's remote learning or they just in the middle of the day, I work from home occasionally. And the other day I was at home and my son, Michael, and I took the dog for a walk in the park in the middle of my day. And, I felt a little guilty about it at first, but then I realized I've got to let go of that and just, enjoy. I needed a little break. And it's okay to take that little break for yourself, take care of yourself and recognize we're all going through it and make sure, you're taking care of yourself through all this.
That was fabulous advice. I love it. So we're going to start a phone tree like soccer practice. Just make sure we're all checking in with each other. And yeah, these are wonderful words. Thank you. Thank you. Dana, do you want to say, oops, I think you're frozen for me. Oh, you're good. Okay.
What you said, Tim, resonated with me. Like I have a ton of weekly calls with my teams, always checking in. I definitely have an agenda, but I always leave the open to talk about what you're doing over the weekend. And we just need to be real with each other. Like I said before, just be patient and it's okay. The other thing I was thinking about what you said, which may sound weird, but I've learned that this is one of my new favorite phrases during this time, which is no news is good news. Because I'm always waiting for that next email or hoping that the next shoe doesn't drop, that someone's tested positive or that's a crisis on something, and learn to appreciate that moment. And to slow down and go, okay, wow, we are just working. We don't always have to anticipate the worst. No news is good news. And another thing that Tim said too was it's okay to do things for yourself. I mean, I've never picked my kids up from the bus stop before, and now I get to do that. And that is the best thing ever for me. And it makes me happy. And I think when we're happy and when we're managing people, they see that. And it really sets a tone of how we want people to be living their lives and working together as a team. So I think they're very similar. Yes.
Love it. Such good. Yes. People, take time for yourself. Couldn't have said it better.
I was hoping I didn't have to follow Tim, and then now I'm bummed I have to follow Tim and Dana. Both spoke so eloquently. A lot of those things I want to reiterate as well. It is, we feel like a family here, and the whole freelance community in Denver and Colorado is like one big family, and it has been really important because these have been really trying times for all of us, just to make sure that we check in with each other and you're right. We don't have a water cooler, and we always run into people on set, and that doesn't happen as much. So I think it has reminded me of the power of community a lot. I'm super fortunate to do what I do, and I love it. And it's that is also kind of been, when it's almost taken away from you, your livelihood or your creative outlet. It is difficult, but so I won't take that for granted ever. But also, like film production is all about problem solving, and I love being on part of a commercial team or like a small team. Just that's what I'm most familiar with. But you just feel like if you put your heads together, there's like not a single problem you can't solve, and usually they're creative or production things. But I think in addition to that, like the way that we've been able to navigate, safely, reimagining the way that we do business in this environment, in the COVID environment, I think that there's, just, it gives me hope for the whole society to be able to get through this. I do feel like there's nothing that we don't have right now available to us, that we can't make it through the pandemic. I know that we all want a vaccine, and I've got a brother who works as a infectious disease doctor. I bug him every time I talk to him. I'm like, when's that vaccine coming? No luck. But I feel like we do have all the tools that we need to get through this safely in work and hopefully as a society. So let's put on those problem solving hats and go out with a positive attitude and get back to work.
Totally. That was a good point. Actually, at the same time, we had a comment come in from Bill who says, aren't we all glad this didn't happen 5 years ago when remote technology for video editing and interviews just would have been, no. Yikes. Yeah, I mean, we are lucky in so many weird ways that this happened at a point where we were ready for Zoom and we can do live video broadcasts, and our phones aren't, as bad as they used to be. Now we can put them on the news. They used to be, just very terrible for everything. So it's so exciting that we're in this point with technology that we can move forward with confidence, and we can still pick up a pretty good speed with that, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much. We are right at the point where we have to say goodbye, but I have really enjoyed hearing your stories today. We have had so many positive comments in the chat. I think your willingness to share today was just so valuable to hear other professionals from all different corners of television talk about their personal and professional experiences in the workplace today. Where it's not as easy as it looks on TV, and I appreciate you guys willing to bare your souls a little bit to tell us about how it really is. The behind the scenes.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
It's been great.
Thank you. Well, we will wrap it up for this time, but we do hope we can do more sessions like this. So if anyone would love to see or has more questions about sessions you'd like to see, of course, we're monitoring the chats, and we hope to bring you more interesting programs in the future. Until then, everyone stay safe, stay healthy, stay creative, and continue to reimagine all that can be. We appreciate it.
Thank you.